The chair recognizes the honourable member for St. Barnabas.
Sorry? Yeah, I don't have a problem being called a breadbasket, man. I mean, you're fighting for the people. The right people. You keep on shouting them numbers. Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Rise, Madam Speaker, on behalf of the resilient people of St. Barnabas, who's given me the opportunity to be here for a second consecutive term. I don't take that lightly, Madam Speaker, particularly considering the large political odds that were put next to my name in the lead up to that election. And so, yeah, to PLPs too, yes they did. To PLPs too. To PLPs too. So, Madam Speaker, you know, I will never apologize in helping the Bahamian people, Madam Speaker. All right? Helping the Bahamian people, Madam Speaker. They were poor people, and they were PLPs and F&Ms, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much. Madam Speaker, thank Almighty God for being a citizen, as I always say, of the greatest country in the world. For me, I don't qualify it as the greatest little nation. I believe that the Commonwealth of the Bahamas is the greatest nation on this earth, and I often contend it's because of our country being an incubator of purpose and talent, and everywhere that Bahamians go, they make their mark, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as many members here this afternoon and this morning would have elaborated a bit on the 50 years of independence, I shall do so as well, Madam Speaker, before giving a few thoughts on the bill at hand.
You're dangerous.
But first, Madam Speaker, would like to let the people of St. Barnabas know, as we continue to deal with this extreme heat, that very shortly there will be an announcement to, you'll be able to pick up, for those who need water, you would be able to pick up some bottles of water from the constituency office to help wherever we can, because the truth is, and I would hope that the member for West, Grand Bahama Bimini, the Minister for Social Services, will keep an eye on the homeless. We'll keep an eye on the homeless, especially, and those people who, unfortunately, in our society are already in vulnerable positions in terms of where they sleep. And the fact is that this heat is unbelievably dangerous. And so just to suggest to the member to be aware of the homeless on the street and those, in particular, persons who are very vulnerable, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, you know, I believe, my father taught me, among many things, that you can't be perfect, but you try to be consistent as you can be. And I say that because one of the things that I have been consistent in, and it has been echoed from many members, is the idea that we should be having a bigger discussion and elevating the debate on where we are as a country in our 50 years. And there is no doubt that we should and have recognized the efforts and the sacrifices and the life's work of our forefathers and foremothers. And as others have, would like to congratulate the member for Seabreeze, who was very diligent in her work. It was obvious. My wife and I attended as many events as we could have. And the honorable member, as other members, was there every night, every day, no matter what event it was. And she deserves to be applauded for her efforts, Madam Speaker. Also, Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank the Bahamian people for the honor of sitting on the National Honors Committee with the honorable member for Fox Hill. I consider it a humble honor to be able to find a national way to recognize persons who continue to give and contribute to the Commonwealth of the Bahamas and its development. Madam Speaker, over the past few weeks, like so many other Bahamians, heart was just filled to see the Bahamian pride on display as we reflect on how far we've come as a country. And I often, daily, I should say, try to remind myself, not try, but remind myself daily of this important role that I've been given and how much of an honor it is for all of us, as I'm sure we all do reflect, on the magnitude of the role that we play and not to take it for granted, Madam Speaker. And I was at the celebrations on Clifford Park, as all of us were. And, you know, I make it my business to continuously pinch myself and keep my ego underneath my bed every morning when I get up and pray, so that you can remind yourself that this is not of your doing, it's God's plan. But on Clifford Park that day, my wife and I, we were sitting right behind Dame Marguerite Pinling, the former Prime Minister, the member for Kalani, former Prime Minister Hubert Ingram, and former Prime Minister Perry Christie. And, you know, I sat there just to take it in. And I said to myself that God has given me the opportunity. God has given me the opportunity to be in these surroundings with these persons who would have contributed to this level in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And to bear witness and to hear some very profound conversations, some of which, of course, you don't disclose, you know, but just to hear the discussions among persons who would have been elevated by the Bahamian people to a certain level. And so it was just a reminder as we sat out there that as much as obviously we know that politics itself has a role, that there is much honor to persons regardless of your political stripe, their service to country, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, you know, the past few weeks also, as I reflected on 50 years of independence, and I've said before in this Parliament, are we asking the profound questions consistently and adequately enough in terms of where we are and where we ought to go and where we should be as a people, Madam Speaker? You know, there are real issues that we have. And I believe, Madam Speaker, that even though try as we must to strip away the politics of what these questions might invoke, the truth is that the Bahamian people, even in this 50 years of independence, and we have much to be proud of and much to celebrate, and we honor those, that the Bahamian people, we have a number of challenges at our doorsteps that we will have to confront, Madam Speaker. Right now, Madam Speaker, we look at the Bahamian people having to contend with issues of energy generation in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and that is real. You know, that is real, and we can get into who fault it is and so forth. But, Madam Speaker, I'm sure we would have seen over social media islands in darkness for hours. You know, people in darkness for hours, the Bahamian people without water in certain places. The infrastructure is failing, Madam Speaker. And I'm sure that every member of Parliament here, as you drive around your constituency, because it's in St. Barnabas, and I know that the member for Fort Charlotte spoke to both of those issues, but what is real is that, unfortunately, the place is in a mess. The infrastructure is failing, and the Bahamian people deserve better. They do deserve better. And like I said, I'm sure every member here, as you drive through your constituency, to see the amount of potholes, to see the amount of degradation in public infrastructure, it is something that the Bahamian people that the Bahamian people rightly should be disgusted of. Particularly, Madam Speaker, when you think about the fact that the Bahamian people make a direct connection between the taxes that they pay. And, you know, it isn't easy, and I know the member for Freetown might have a view on this, because he and I have spoken about this before. It isn't necessarily easy to, you know, to sue the government, to sue the government, well, I should say, easy to sue, but get compensation. The reason why I mention that is because the natural expectation of the Bahamian people should be that they pay their taxes, and if your car falls into a hole, it really should be the government's responsibility to compensate the Bahamian people for what happens to that vehicle. Sorry? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, no, listen. No, it ain't a dangerous road. That at the end of the day, the Bahamian people expect a certain level of service from government services. That's the point that I'm making. No, but that's they pay their taxes. No, they pay their taxes. They pay the taxes. The point, don't try to. The Bahamian people, they pay their taxes. Stay focused. They pay their taxes, and they should expect a certain level of service from the government. I'll repeat again that there are Bahamians who have been contending with darkness in 2023. Darkness. Yeah, darkness. And it's on the day of on Independence evening, something came across social media where the electricity was out in Abaco. It was out in Abaco during an independence celebration. That's where we are, and that's what we have to contend with. We're now at 61 murders in the Commonwealth, 61 murders in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. 61 murders in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and that should bother all of us. 61 murders in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, 50 years of independence. And not to suggest, for those who may try to stir it up, that I'm attempting to diminish what we've done in 50 years, because I would never do that. What I'm saying, though, is that as we pivot for the next 25 and the next 50 years, there are real issues that we have to contend with, that this government, because you are the government, has the opportunity. So as much as these 50 years and this 50th year of independence bears great distinction, the question that we must all ask ourselves, and this government must ask themselves, what will the Bahamian people say that this government who was in the 50th year of independence, what did they do on behalf of the Bahamian people? What landmark pieces of legislation has been brought to this parliament for us to truly transform the lives of the Bahamian people in a significant way? The member for Angleston, to her credit, my cousin, to her credit, has been consistent in talking about the challenges facing education. And the most recent former Minister of Education, Minister Jeff Lloyd, also talked about it. So you ask ourselves, what type of education system, what do we want to do? What kind of serious deposit will we continue to put down to educate the next generation of Bahamians and to mitigate? Madam Speaker, just being very, I'm trying to get us to the point, Madam Speaker, to make the larger point that we have real issues, that we ought to deal with in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, Madam Speaker. We have the issue of immigration, that is front and center. And once you strip away the politics, the reality of it is what Bahamians feel. I'm not talking about xenophobia. What Bahamians feel is real and true. The member for Centerville talked about it today, about Bahamians not feeling like they're second-class citizens. So Bahamians talk about, so they have their land, and when their land is occupied, and they try to get people off, they talk about the injunctions that happen and how it disadvantages them. These are real issues, and even when we go back to the need for criminal justice reform and judicial reform, and I know we've all talked about it. Why are we bringing bills to this Parliament to make the necessary changes that even the Commissioner of Police has talked about that needs to happen? When are we going to be dealing with these major issues, Madam Speaker? So, Madam Speaker, you know, I know that often there's this attempt to say that you're not talking about the bill, but the truth is that these are, yeah, that's when it's appropriate for you, no problem. But, Madam Speaker, and the thing about this, as we talk about this, as I look at this bill, Madam Speaker, you think about the magnitude of some of the things I've just talked about, but we've come here to find a way to stop certain classes of people from paying $250 when we have real significant issues that we can be dealing with, Madam Speaker. I say again, Madam Speaker, in 2023, Madam Speaker, Bahamians, North Auckland's was out without power for 3 hours, South Auckland's was out for 4 hours, right? Madam Speaker, but here's the truth that the government has to deal with. No, that's not the point. No, that's not the point. The point is it shouldn't be 3 and 4 hours. And ever since this government has come to office, BPL has not been the same. BPL has not been the same. BPL has not been the same since the government has come to office. And the level of power generation and what the Bahamian people are experiencing has not been the same, Madam Speaker.
You're wrong.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Central and South Africa.
Madam Speaker.
Starting on point of order, I believe good gentleman from St. Barnabas is seriously misleading the Bahamian public in a whole. When you look at road degradation, it's not something that happens overnight. It's something from lack of governments over the previous administration that has caused us to be in this situation that we're in now. When you're speaking about BPL and how the problems are consistent now, that's because of lack of maintenance, lack of proper distribution. I know particularly from Abaco where the lines were thrown up on the rocks. The power, the management was deprived of the tools and the necessities that they needed to get the jobs done. I speak to the men on the ground on a daily basis who work night and day to work with what they have. And it is obvious, it's clear that everything was dismantled from the previous. So these aren't things that just pop up and happen overnight. You know, and this relates to crime as well. But what I do see is almost 2 years in, I see optimism. I see a brighter future. I see the Bahamian populace looking like we are going to come out of this better than before, looking like they have a government that cares. But I just want to say that it's very misleading to say and go down the line that he was at that moment.
Thank you, honourable member. The chair recognizes the honourable member for Kalani.
Madam Speaker, since the member following on the footsteps of the member from South Beach, I challenge both members to bring the maintenance log here to Parliament and table those logs, which would show the facts. Otherwise, they need to withdraw what they're saying because they know that they're not speaking validity or truth.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, you know, I hear the member, you know, talk about that these things didn't just happen. The reality of it is, Madam Speaker, I'm sure that the honourable member isn't suggesting that the holes that are in these roads, the multitude of holes in the roads is a result of 2 years. Can be, my God, the Bahamian people would really be in problems if these holes were wrong prior to 2 years ago. Madam Speaker, the truth is, nothing tells the Bahamian people more about competency and ability of a government to govern than the ability to keep up the infrastructure. And right now, the government is failing in that regard, Madam Speaker. Failing in that regard. Madam Speaker, no matter how, you have a constituency, Madam Speaker, called Bamboo Town. And I'm sure if you were to give your opinion, if you chose to, ma'am, you would be able to say you have a problem with holes in the streets in Bamboo Town, as every member of parliament would be able to speak. And I challenge any member to stand up and say their roads are good in their constituency and they all good. Exactly. So no member will stand up and say that. Right? Okay? So, Madam Speaker, I understand the importance. Every piece of legislation has a different level of importance, there's no doubt. Different level of importance and different constituencies, yeah, no doubt. But I do think it's a matter of prioritizing the needs of the Bahamian people, and we have to be very careful in how selective we are with pieces of legislation, particularly when you look at the challenges of the Bahamian people, Madam Speaker. The member for Shanendon, again, I really appreciated his contribution this morning, because in this 50th year, we have to, as we go into the next 50, we really have to embrace this level of active citizenship that I've talked about as well, and that our people appreciate that as much as government has a responsibility, in which government does, as individual citizens, we all have an obligation. So the greatness that we wish to see our country fulfill is directly tied to our ability individually to make the sacrifices we need to make, Madam Speaker. And speaking about ensuring that our people are not treated like second-class citizens. You know, I drove around the island the other day, Madam Speaker, and I understand there's similar challenges in some of the family islands where, you know, access to beaches, and a number of the legal entryways that exist. You know, homeowners are being very strategic. It's a problem we've had for a while, and it's something that we need to address because Bahamians are getting boxed in, and access to beaches are becoming very, very, very limited, Madam Speaker. Also, Madam Speaker, there was something that was in the papers this morning, and it's been around for, I think, the last week. I do not know, let me say full disclosure, I do not know some of the intimate details of the situation. I've spoken to members of the union relative to what is happening to a shop steward over at Atlantis, right? But I would just say this, that shop stewards, in particular, who represent the union, who are employed by companies, should be treated in a proper way. I don't know the circumstances, but they deserve their protection. And I hope that matter is resolved, because we want any company in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas that have union members to deal with union members properly, to the benefit of workers, and quite frankly, a harmonious environment obviously benefits the business environment, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, as I take my seat, Madam Speaker, I believe that the future of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas will be great. During the many different events where you would have seen, even at the beat retreat, and you would see the number of young people involved in our security branches and all levels of our country. There is no doubt that the future of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas is in good hands, and let us continue to support the young people of this country. And it was just wonderful, Madam Speaker. I rushed on the morning after Clifford Park, on the morning of the 10th, rushed for that great group, the Valley Boys, and just to see the smiles. Yeah, it was for the Valley Boys, but it was because we were celebrating, just to see the smiles on the faces of Bahamians who, and even as you paraded down Bay Street, who were really reflecting on what it is to be Bahamian, what the Bahamas, what their country has done for them. I would just add to that, and I did say it to a number of Bahamians who would stop me, is that, yes, our country has done a lot for us, but we have to ask now, what are we prepared to do for our country in the development of our communities, the larger Bahamian society, and the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, Madam Speaker? I do wish as well, Madam Speaker, to really pay homage, Madam Speaker, truly pay homage to our forefathers and foremothers. I think I've spoken before that my stepfather had a gas station on Shirley Street, and I used to pump gas. And one of the most memorable experiences in doing that was the persons who would come there to receive gas. You know, Sir Rachel Thompson. Sir Rachel Thompson was the first commissioner. The member for Anglican's father used to come to that gas station as well. Mr. J. Henry Boswick, Kelsey Johnson, all sorts of persons from all walks of life. And what I did appreciate that my stepfather had persons from all political walks of life who would come to that gas station, and whose cars I would put gasoline in. So just very grateful to all of those persons who would have paved the way for us and who would have sacrificed. All of the prime ministers from Shanendon Pinling to the present prime minister for their service in that capacity. Because the truth is that heavy is the head that wears the crown, and obviously history is the ultimate judge of all of those persons, including the member for Kalani, who've led our country, and history will take care of that. But in the realm of service to country, we thank them. We thank them, Madam Speaker, and all who have contributed to creating the greatest country in the world, the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.